Hi, I'm Hazzard. I'm taking on the myth teacher led instruction is passive. This conjures up an image of a teacher teaching in front of a class and they're giving very little input. When researching this myth, the name Siegfried Engelmann popped up quite a lot. He's a philosopher who created a method that where immediate positive and corrective feedback is given to a learner to avoid confusion. He used this to teach basic skills. Seems like a dry topic, but there's lots of controversy because in the 60s, when he was delivering his message of direct instruction, it was very different than the model that was presently in place, which was modeled after Piaget's developmental learning theories. So we have Montessori's being created, we have curriculum being developed based on Piaget. And he's saying, well, yeah, I get that there's developmental stages, but we can manipulate their environment and take them beyond this developmental stage much, much sooner and introduce academics much sooner than the other programs were doing. And he did so quite successfully. It wasn't well received though because it was a direct challenge of Piaget, which educators highly regard. Well, some of the things that were being said is that teachers didn't like the scripted nature of the whole brain teaching because it limits their creativity, and that's true. But it also gives the teacher the opportunity to develop and hone a certain skill set. It's very similar to what you might see today in whole brain teaching and also discrete trial training, which students with autism are taught using a very similar method where they're given very tiny bits of information and given that feedback, that immediate feedback that you would see in direct teaching. And it's done in small groups or whole groups, typically speaking. Some educators said that it was boring, and it wasn't boring. If you go into a classroom that has it direct instruction and who's really executing it well, the students are very much engaged and on task. Go into any classroom and you're going to see 20, 50, 70% engagement. A well executed direct instruction program is going to have much higher engagement, typically speaking, but any good teacher is going to have good engagement for that matter. Passive, the fact that the myth is that it's passive is also only accurate in the sense that perceptual learning takes place in the brain in a passive way. So his strategies or methods were based on discriminating, learning to discriminate. So I have an example. So he would teach what something is and what something is not. For instance, red, 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 not red. And build from there. That's how the students learned. And in large range studies, outperformed students by a long shot. It was said that the program lacks individuality. Well, again, that's somewhat true because it is scripted or very methodical at the least. But where it makes up for that is that the students individually gain confidence. And with that confidence, they're able to take their education further. And it can probably help in so many other ways that I can't go into right now, just in terms of their social emotional progress and their academic growth. So that student confidence is what we want to see. Neuroscience shows up in direct instruction because they test so much. As a matter of fact, we now know that testing is studying, so that's present. We see the desirable difficulty principle because they are constantly required to retrieve. We see spacing because the information is taught incrementally, day by day by day, building slightly, and even going back around and going day 1, day 3, day 14, and testing. So that formative and summative assessments are constantly taking place. Teachers have tons of data. And once we get back, again, back to the perceptual learning piece, which the whole content instructional program is developed on. So I like it personally because when I'm looking at my special needs students, their neurodevelopment differences are addressed really well with these types of systems. And the last piece, when talking about bringing this neuroscience to the classroom, that is definitely a tricky situation because a lot of teachers don't really know about neuroscience. I happen to be just personally interested in it, but the only way it's going to get to the classroom is if a teacher is personally interested, if a teacher purchases journals and reads about it independently, if they might find out about a neuroscience convention, which I just found out even existed. Maybe there's somebody on their campus who is really into neuroscience and enthusiastically brings it to the staff. You might even have a situation like this where I'm in a master's program and it brings it. So how it gets from that lab environment into a classroom, there's lots of channels, and there's political channels, and there's so much. There's so much. So including perception, actually, which is the thing that blocked Engelman. Well, the last thing I kind of want to say is Open Court was a direct instruction program that was brought to LAUSD. And the districts tend to have this pendulum where, okay, we're over here with constructivism and inquiry-based learning standards, guided by standards, and then now we're over here using the standards in a way that's driven by direct instruction. It drives teachers a little bit crazy to be in this ping pong match. And so it adds a layer of resistance to these things getting done. And I think it also clouds the field for learning the research behind these district mandates. So that's going to be it. That's all I'm going to say. And thank you so much for listening.